for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak tonight on Bill C-88 at this third reading stage, and we'll be splitting my time with my colleague from Markham, Unionville. This bill is divided into two parts, as we've heard. Part A amends the Mackenzie Valley Resource Management Act, while Part B amends the Canada Petroleum Resources Act. It is the second half of the bill that I will primarily be addressing in the time that I have today. Simply put, this section of C-88 makes a mockery of the government's claim to seriously consult with Aboriginal and Inuit peoples. Furthermore, it proves yet again that the Liberal Party is no friend of the Canadian oil and gas sector. Part B of Bill C-88 imposes a 5-year moratorium on the development of offshore oil and gas projects in the Beaufort Sea. This is not surprising for anyone who has followed this government with even a modicum of attention. The Liberals have proven time and time again that they are opposed to Canada's energy sector. Whether it be the carbon tax or Bill C-48, banning tanker traffic off British Columbia's northern coast, or the 180 Amendment, Frankenstein monster of a bill that is the No More Pipeline C-69, or the cancellation of the Northern Gateway and Energy East pipelines, or the continued bungling of the Trans Mountain extension. We can always count on the Liberals to find a way to make life miserable for workers in our oil and gas sector. At every opportunity, the Prime Minister has politicized the regulatory and environmental assessment processes. Bill C-88 follows this already established pattern. As a result, it is no wonder Canada has been bleeding foreign investment funds and suffered economic stagnation under this Prime Minister. Bill C-88 is about more than just the Liberals' clear disdain for our natural resource sector. This bill exposes this Prime Minister's false claims of consultation. Under the previous Conservative government, we made a concerted effort to devolve power to the territories, to ensure that they had the decision-making powers they needed to develop their abundance of natural resources in a safe, secure, and sustainable manner. I will not pretend that we got it right every step of the way, but there was no doubt about our goal and our honest attempt to transfer power to the territorial level. In one afternoon, this Prime Minister derailed years of progress by the territories toward full self-governance. At a glitzy press conference in Washington, designed to garner praise from the international press, he announced that Canada would be placing a moratorium on offshore drilling in the north. This announcement came as quite the surprise to the governments of the territories. Some of them received less than an hour's notice that the Prime Minister was about to throw their economic futures out the window so he could get a nice write-up in Vanity Fair. Minister Wally Schuman of the Northwest Territories described how they found out about the ban and the impact it will have on our north, and I quote, "When it first came out, we never got very much notice on the whole issue of the moratorium and the potential that was in the Beaufort Sea. There were millions and millions, if not billions of dollars in bid deposits and land leases up there. That took away any hope we had of developing the Beaufort Sea," end quote. Really, we shouldn't be surprised. This Prime Minister has always believed in a paternalistic, Ottawa knows best relationship with our territories, provinces, and Indigenous peoples. Mayor Mervyn Grubin put it well when speaking at committee in Ottawa, and I quote, "It's so easy to sit down here and make judgments on people and lives that are 3,500 clicks away and make decisions on our behalf, especially with that moratorium on the Beaufort. That should be taken away, lifted, please and thank you. That is going to open up and give jobs to our people, training, and all the stuff we're wishing for," end quote. The Prime Minister has decided the future for the North, and he's using this bill to make that happen. But he never stopped and asked what the people in the North want. And they don't want this. Northwest Territories Premier Bob McLeod stated clearly how his government felt about the announcement, and I quote, "It feels like a step backwards. We spent a lot of time negotiating a devolution agreement, and we thought the days were gone when we'd have unilateral decisions made about the North in some faraway place like Ottawa, and that Northerners would make the decisions about issues that affected Northerners," end quote. Then Premier of Nunavut, Peter Tuptuna, shared McLeod's frustrations, and I quote, "We do want to be getting to a state where we can make our own determination of our priorities, and the way to do that is gain meaningful revenue from resource development. And at the same time, when one potential source of revenue is taken off the table, it puts us at practically square one, where Ottawa will make the decision for us," end quote. In my role as Shadow Minister for Transportation, I've had the chance to meet with companies and groups seeking to develop in the North, to provide jobs and future prospects to Inuit and other Northern Canadians. I've heard one phrase repeated over and over again: one big park. Stakeholders have told me over and over again that they feel the Liberals don't care about their economic development, but are only interested in making Northern Canada one big park, even if that means ignoring the will of Indigenous peoples. As I prepared these remarks and delved into Bill C-88, I couldn't help but see the parallels between this top-down Ottawa Knows Best bill and Bill C-48, the Liberals' ideological Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. Bill C-48 is called the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act, but everyone knows it is an anti-pipeline bill designed to eliminate any possibility of a pipeline to Tidewater through northern British Columbia. This Prime Minister has a pattern of imposing his will on Indigenous groups while still claiming to consult, just like they did when banning northern development through Bill C-88. The Liberal government pushed ahead on Bill C-48 without consulting Indigenous stakeholders. Testifying at Transport Committee on C-48, Gary Alexi, hereditary chief of the Niska'a Nation for the community of Jingolach, made the following comments about this Liberal government's consultation process. With no consultation, the BC First Nations groups have been cut off economically, with no opportunity to even sit down with the government to further negotiate Bill C-48. In fact, Eagle Spirit Energy, a First Nations-owned energy company, is taking this government to court over C-48 because of, among other reasons, this very lack of consultation. In cancelling the Northern Gateway pipeline, the Prime Minister ignored the input of over 30 First Nations along the route who had revenue agreements in place. Again, this is the Liberals' Ottawa knows best mentality in practice. Yet this Prime Minister continues to claim time and again to consult with Indigenous stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I oppose this Ottawa-centric, anti-Canadian energy industry mentality, and it is for that reason that I will be voting against Bill C-88. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this Bill C-88, is intended to enhance the involvement of Indigenous people in the regulatory process. And when the changes that were brought forward by the Conservative government in 2014, everybody was against it, including industry. They were saying, don't change the process. This is a process that we're familiar with. Everybody's used to it. Let's continue to use it. But the government of the day decided, no, we got to get rid of the regional boards. We don't need the land and water boards. We want to have one super board, and they plowed ahead, even though everybody recommended against it. So when I hear the honourable member talk about disdain for industry by introducing this bill, it makes me wonder why she would say that when industry supports this bill. And when she says that this bill is going to be detrimental to industry, she's forgetting that this bill is going to enhance the involvement of Indigenous people. So is she saying industry is more important than the Indigenous people of the North?
Good point.
Thank you.
Honourable member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the question, although I will dispute his characterization of what I said in my speech and the fact that he is trying to confuse the issue when, in fact, the issue that most Indigenous communities have and that we have with this bill is Part B. And what we've heard is that Indigenous peoples and communities were not consulted on this part of the bill. We know that Part B amends the Canada Petroleum Resources Act to allow the Governor in Council to issue orders when in the national interest to prohibit oil and gas activities and freezes the terms of existing licenses to prevent them from expiring during a moratorium. Again, we've heard that Indigenous communities were not consulted on this part of the legislation. I think further, this bill reveals a full rejection of calls from elected territorial leaders for increased control of their natural resources. And we heard that. I am deeply concerned that with Bill C-88, the Liberals continue to entrench into law their ability to continue to arbitrarily and without consultation block oil and gas projects. Thank you.
Honourable member for